Last month, I was sitting in Louisville, Kentucky, in a hotel room because I travel a lot for work. And at night, for about a week, there were these repeating stories about dogs dying. After a morning of going frolicking with their families into their local rivers and waterways, within a couple of hours, the dog would die. And they thought it was due to this toxic algae in the water. And in fact, that is the cause. And it wasn't just one dog, it was multiple dogs. And it wasn't one state, it was multiple states. This is Kentucky, Ohio, North Carolina in the South. And this is not a new problem either. This has been occurring. And in fact, in these areas, there are some permanent warning signs posted to tell people to stay out of the water. If you're pregnant, if you're nursing, if you have health conditions, if you're a child, you shouldn't go into the water because you could get sick. So what a shame that on a Saturday morning, you're ready to go have fun with your family, you go out to the beach, you want to get into the stream, and you shouldn't go in, or if you do, unknowingly you get out, you get sick, or your pet dies. So what's going on with this? All right, so what's causing this is excess nitrogen and phosphorus that's loading into these waterways. The nutrients that are coming come from a whole host of different sources. They come from industrial dischargers, from farms in the landscape, and from people. You, as a person, has your own nutrient footprint. You have a nitrogen footprint. Like you have a carbon footprint or you have a water footprint. You have a nitrogen footprint. How you live, what you eat, are you vegetarian? Are you vegan? Do you put fertilizer on your lawns? Do you have solar on your house? All of these things contribute to your overall nitrogen footprint. And in fact, this is a huge ecological problem. So we hear about climate change and biodiversity loss, and of course, those are also big problems. How many people hear about the reactive nitrogen problem? It's a big issue. And it's not just in your local waterways. All of these nutrients build up into a huge watershed. This is the Mississippi River Basin, covers about 30% of the whole United States, and it drains down into the Gulf of Mexico. So as there's toxic algae in your local waterways, it's growing into actually a big ecological issue. So this is one of the largest dead zones in the world. So what is a dead zone? A dead zone is an area where everything is dead. Nothing can live there. So as nitrogen builds up in these systems, usually in a working, functioning system, it's a limiting nutrient, right? That's why we all put fertilizer on our vegetable gardens. It's why we fertilize our crop fields. It's limiting to what we otherwise might want to get done, is grow our plants. But when it builds up in such an excess, you get a lot of plant growth. And it's growing so much down in the dead zone that all these plants use up all that available oxygen. So it creates an hypoxic zone. Okay, so there's no oxygen left for anything else that's growing there. This dead zone is the size of the state of New Jersey. It's about 9,000 square miles wide. It is whopper, and it's a huge issue. There's a whole task force called the Gulf of Mexico Hypoxia Task Force to try to solve this. And that task force is not a new task force. It's been running for quite a long period of time. So this is a difficult issue, not only because of all those, remember all those contributors to the loading, all the contributors to nitrogen and phosphorus, and you have all of these states. So if you point to one person, to me, am I the problem? I'm not the problem. is this one wastewater treatment plant the problem? No. In fact, is the whole state of Indiana the problem? No, they're not the problem either. It's everybody together that builds up, which what is the key reason why this makes this challenge so difficult to address, because we all take a part in this and we all have a shared responsibility. Okay, so what's the difference? So you have a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, there's a lot of ecological problems. Why does this one really matter? Well, you have 70% of shrimp in the dead zone that supplies the United States, over 60% of oysters. You have the blue crab, which has an annual economic value of $135 million annually. And you have the well-being of fishermen that have worked these systems for generations that are being impacted. The shrimp can't get to their spawning areas. So even if a shrimp is growing and it's swimming around and it's relatively happy, it can't get back to produce the next generation because it can't get through the dead zone. So this is a huge problem socially and ecologically, and it's relatively difficult to solve. Okay, so what's the solution? Now you got the problem, right? You got the causes. You have both dogs dying and people that can't swim, and you have fishery collapse. Okay, so what's the solution? How about this? The engineering idea, right? So is this viable? Okay, so this would be maybe analogous to replacing the billions of bees with pollinating drones. Can we replace billions of bees flying around with drones to get pollination done? I don't know. It's an interesting idea, right? It's an engineering solution. It's super cool from a technology and engineering side. Well, this is kind of interesting, but being a conservation biologist, I don't tend to think of widgets. I think of trying to work with the system and work collaboratively with the system. So what's another idea? Okay, so trees, right? So everybody loves to plant trees. We hear about it all the time. We look at above the soil, right? The leaves, the trunk, they sequester carbon, they support biodiversity, they provide shade for us to have our picnics under. What's happening in the root system is really, really important for trees. So trees they suck up nitrogen and phosphorus, which are the two issues that we're talking about here. And they do it pretty well, too. So this is a potential solution here for trying to reduce how much loading is going into our waterways, right? It's a potential solution for managing what's there. All right, so let's say that it is. Let's say that you kind of buy that from me. You accept that trees are generally a good idea. Okay, so do we know scientifically that they can get the job done? How many would you plant and where would you put them? So we did a study. I published a paper with Dr. Arturo Keller, University of California, Santa Barbara, and I. So it's Keller and Fox, published in June of 2019, so just recently, in a peer-reviewed journal, PLOS One. We ran thousands of modeling runs to figure out, could trees get this job done? And where should you put them? And how many should go in? And we had a pretty phenomenal result as it turned out. And the results actually were republished through National Geographic in a Nat Geo paper in July of 2019. So here's what we found. We found that if you work on particular areas in the landscape, you can target where these trees are planted to have really substantial results. In fact, you can reduce nitrogen loading by 90%. by picking where your trees go, and phosphorus loading by 99%. Remember when I said at the beginning the contributors to this overall system, one of them you saw in there was farmers from agriculture? They're a big load for nitrogen and phosphorus. It's understandable. They need to get the most yield off of their farms, right? Nitrogen isn't very expensive. So they're going to over apply nitrogen in many cases to make sure they're not affecting their yield. That's understandable. We know that. These farmers, man, they are the salt of the earth, right? They work hard and they don't want to wonder, did I put enough fertilizer on my field? So if we look on this landscape and we say, okay, but not all this farmland is very productive. There are areas that are not working well. The farmer landowner doesn't necessarily like working certain areas of their farm, or it's not producing enough crops. So where are those areas? Well, they're high slopey areas. They're slopey. That's a technical science term, right? Slopey. And they're clayey. The soil type is clay. So it's low infiltration, high slope, and low yield. So low crop yield. So where is that a great place for trees? So you take your trees and you put them in this high slope, high clay, low crop yield. You hardly take any production out of the system for crops, but you restore trees. And by targeting only a small area there that we looked at, if you take 10% of low yield cropland out of production and put trees across the Ohio River Basin, a subset of the Mississippi River Basin, you can get 60 million kilograms of nitrogen, 2 million kilograms of phosphorus, equivalent to 1.54 million people, the nitrogen footprint of 1.54 million people, with approximately 250 million trees. Okay, so now we know the science works, we know where to put the trees, and we know how many, okay? All right, great. This is all theoretical. How do we get it done? Well, what if we could create a system where the people that wanted to offset their nitrogen and phosphorus footprint could pay a farmer to do those specific projects? The farmer would plant trees, create something called a credit, and then folks would buy the credit. When you buy the credit, it moves money back into more conservation, more farming practices, and you get more done. Okay, so on the credit side, who's going to pay for this? Okay, so we have in the Ohio River Basin, for example, companies like Walmart. You have Eli Lilly, the Limited Brands, Gap, Old Navy, Kentucky Fried Chicken. You have Honda. These are companies that have a nitrogen footprint. They also are very concerned about reputation and corporate sustainability. So let's say that we could say, if you buy these credits, it's an effective, legitimate way to meet your corporate sustainability goals that will be internationally recognized. So Global Reporting Initiative, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, CDP, the CEO Water Mandate, these are all internationally recognized mechanisms that companies want. And if your credit can map to these, it creates that business case for companies to purchase the credits. You as an individual, let's get back to your personal nitrogen footprint. That's you in the middle, that's your house. You live in this house on the right side. Your nitrogen footprint as an average American is 85 pounds of nitrogen a year. Let's just say you want to buy credits because you're concerned about this. How could you do this? Are you going to go find this farmer and say, I'll pay you 85 bucks or $1,000, you go do the project? That'd be pretty tough, right? It'd be tough for even Honda to do that, right? So let's say that we can create this market. What if we delivered to you a market where you could use a credit card and you funded a farmer and you got the nitrogen credits, they were mapped to your name and retired for your benefit. Let's say we could do that. We did do it. We created the Ohio River Basin Water Quality Trading Project. This is the largest water quality trading project in the world. It currently operates in Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. It's been covered by the Wall Street Journal. It's been on NPR. It's been on TV, Waterworld, and it won notably the United States Water Prize in 2015. So this is a system where money pumps in. We facilitate the outreach to farmers to fund projects. It creates a measured, verified credit that now you can purchase online with a credit card. You can buy 1 pound if you want with a credit card today, or companies could buy 100,000 pounds. These are some of our farmers. Down on the lower bottom is John in Ohio. We just funded him a 200-acre tree planting project in Ohio. It supports, he gets out there, he has grandkids, right? It supports monarch butterfly were there. I was just on this site 2 weeks ago with him. You have butterflies, you have wildlife, you have birds, and the waterway is being protected. So let's hear from another landowner. This is David Haig on the top. We also funded a project with him, and I just want you to hear, rather than me speaking for these landowners, I want you to hear from them directly. So I'm going to play a short clip, and you can hear what he says.
We are attempting to convert agricultural land back to more suitable natural use. And we're going to do that by taking out of crop production and putting in some wetlands and some trees, mostly trees, and attempt to recreate a natural environment best we can. This is the first batch of 3,100 trees that are going into a conservation area. These trees are native to the area within about 50 miles, so we're using only trees that are already found here, mostly, but all native nevertheless. And these are over a 2-year period. We hope to start a long-term forest. We have 3,100 trees to plant over the next 2 years, and this is 1/10 of them. The goal would be a 500-year-old forest. So you are standing in our 30-acre field that has been in cultivation for a long time, but this is where we're going to be planting our first year's 1,780 trees and shrubs. So this field will be planted in trees and shrubs, and what we've also done here is scoured out a bit of the previous wetland characteristics of this property, and hopefully they will fill up, and then all the critters who are in the surrounding areas who've had their own vernal pools will find something new and exciting, and they'll come join the party out here, because we want to keep it so that if we're all around 50 years from now or 500 years from now, we wouldn't know that any person or people put this in. It just looks like the forest to the north and to the south. So that's the goal. So the less impact or the less people can see what we've done, better. That's success. As corny as it may sound, I'm part of the human experience that has exploited so much property, well-meaning, and so this is our chance to give back a bit. So we hope to leave it in better shape than we found it.
So David, he owns Coyote Run Farm just outside Columbus in Ohio. So that's the story of many of our farmers. Now, we have contracts now with over 60 farmers, and the contracts extend to 40 years. So one thing that is important about this potential solution is that once the trees go in, you can, and your conservation projects are installed, we can start to see the benefits within your local waterways and downstream within a year or two. So this isn't that the things have to happen and then in 10, 20, 30 years, we see the benefit, which would also be justifiable. But in this case, we can see the benefits within a few years. So the connection between your solution and the outcome is really important. And for your shrimp fishermen in the Gulf, this needs to happen. They have impacts now, right? This season. This is predicted to be one of the largest this year, the largest dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico ever. So you take a little bit of those nutrients that we all are collectively contributing, and you mix that up with a little bit of sunshine, and you have a big problem. When you buy credits here, you get a credit certification of purchase agreement, and all the credits have serial numbers. They can only be transacted once. They're all posted online in the public view. Every credit is mapped to a photo of your farm, before and after photo of your farm. We have 100,000 credits available now. So why am I working on this? So these are my little loveys, and they're not so little anymore. That cute blonde one is now saving up to buy a Mustang, which is pretty scary, right? So I'm hoping that doesn't kill him. And so who do they love? They love their dog, Shags. And I want to be able to go into these waterways. I want to be able to go kayaking. I want to be able to go swimming. And I want all of you to be able to do that too, right? And I want the fish to be happy and healthy. So that's my perspective on this. This is my passion around it. And this is why the whole team that has created this project, the 3 states that are involved, the federal and state agencies that support it, are into this and why they want to see this get going. Okay, so that's great. So what's the problem? Why am I here? If I was so successful, I probably may not be here. I don't know. So the problem is that cash credit cycle is not pumping. It has to get turning around. We need more people to be buying credits, more big buyers of these credits, right? To get this whole cash credit cycle pumping so we can fund more farmers and more conservation. That's what needs to happen now. And imagine if we could do that. We know the science works. We know we can get the farmers. We know we can get it done. But we need more credit buyers at the table.